Welcome to the Holistic Living Radio Show, and I'm your host, Alpha QT. And you can tune in every Thursday at 3 p.m. right here at www.thesoulexpress.com. And Express is spelled with the X, so it's TheSoulXpress.com. And it's simple as that. You can listen on the go, or you can listen while you're shopping, taking care of the kids, cooking, or just chilling out. So tune in and share this with a friend. We have an awesome show prepared for you today. We're going to talk about the 5 steps to overcoming a shame-based living. So let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to talk about what in the world is, give a definition of what is shame-based living. Well, shame-based living is life experiences that you've had that still affecting your everyday life today. And to give you an example of my life as a shame-based living, I always share the story about myself as during 60s and 70s, how I got strung out on drugs. And I didn't even know what drugs was. I didn't even know that I was strung out until one day I woke up with the guy that I was staying with at the time, and I said, "Oh my God, I think I have pneumonia." And he said, "No, I think that all that white powder you've been putting up your nose for the last year or so, I think you have a Jones." And I said, "Well, what the heck is a Jones?" And he says, it's when you keep putting white powder up your nose, you get addicted to it. So he went out and bought a couple. At that time, the pills were sold in what you call a penny cap. He went out and got a couple of the penny caps and came back and opened up the capsule and put it, and they put it in little lines, and you take a straw and take your couple lines. And as soon as I did that, I was well immediately. And I thought, oh my God, I never experienced nothing like this before, And so I told him, I said, well, listen, I don't like this. I don't like being, where I have to have something. I'm just not going to use none of this anymore. He said, yeah, like, good luck with that. And so that ended up being like a 9-10 year experience, So anyway, I had, I just thought that was a terrible experience for any person to go through, not just myself to have, I was like 9 years living on the street, homeless sometimes, in and out of jail. It was just insane. And I hated that whole lifestyle, and I felt shame about it. I felt like, my goodness, couldn't God have chosen another experience for me? But now that I look back, it was the best experience for me because it was the best lesson. And other people, like if you have had experiences like, I was talking to a young lady the other day. She was telling me about, she had abortions, and now she's with, someone that wants to have a baby, and she didn't know if that was going to affect, and she hadn't told the person that she had, because she was ashamed, that she did that. She had several abortions, in fact, and so she felt ashamed about that. And I talk, moms feel bad that their kids don't turn out the way that they think that they should. Dads feel bad, So all of these are shame-based living, and these are experiences that we allow to have in our lives where it affects us. So today we're going to talk about 5 steps of how you overcome shame-based living. So that's the definition of the shame-based living. So let's get into talking about what the steps are. The first step is becoming conscious of the experience. The first step is being able to see the bigger picture. Remember, last week we talked about shifting paradigms, and the reason why we need to shift it because the way that you see the problem is usually the problem. And so that's the same thing that applies here, is that you becoming conscious of what that experience are, why it was shameful, and why you have not been able to overcome that shameful experience, and how you let it affect your everyday life now. So step 1 is becoming conscious of the experience, and then learning how to see the bigger picture in the experience, because every experience that we have is here to bring us a lesson. Yeah, it's here to bring us a lesson. So we have to look at, what was the lesson, as opposed to spending time being ashamed of the experience. Look at what was the purpose, what was the lesson, because when you listen to other people tell their story, you see where an idea of how to start, their purpose and their mission came from that shame-based experience, So step number one is becoming conscious, of the experience, and looking at the experience and looking at the lesson that you learned from it, because when you're able to do that, it becomes less and less a shameful experience for you. And step number two is acknowledging the experience, because that's what become a problem to us, is that we don't acknowledge the experience. That's why it becomes so hurtful. That's why it's something because we are ashamed of it, and we hold on, and that shame feeling affects us. It affects our self-esteem. It affects our ability to be truthful with ourselves. I was listening to the comedian J.L. Hughley, and he was saying that if you don't tell your story, that somebody else will tell it for you. And that's true, So you want to tell your story. Now, that doesn't mean that you need a bullhorn and everybody you come in contact with, you're going to, start telling them about your shame-based living. You don't need to do that. You want to be strategic about telling the story. Let me give you an example. Now, I created when I create my vision boards of what kind of men that I want to share my life with, one of the things I have on the vision board is, highly educated. So my last 30 years, 30, 40 years relationships that I've had have been with men that was educated. So the relationship that I was in at this particular time, the person was the principal of the school. So the people that I would come in contact with, the people that visit my home for entertainment and parties and things, were usually teachers, educators, and principals of school. And I had a business at the time. It was Institute of Self-Improvement Services, and so him and I put our knowledge together, and we started doing cultural diversity workshops, for teachers and educators. And I would, there's something lurking in the deep subconscious of myself. I always felt like I wasn't worthy or something, and I was doing some crazy stuff. For example, one time I created a conference, and I had all people on the conference that was educated, because I felt like that's what educated people want. And then I would ask people for feedback, and the lady told me, "We came to hear you. We don't want to hear all that stuff. We came to hear you," because I noticed when I would get up to do my presentation, because I would relate it, my experience, I tell my story, and would relate the experiences that I had in my presentation, that people seemed to wake up and they stopped squiggling, writing on papers, texting on their cell phones and stuff. It seems like I would catch their attention, So I had to, I had to learn, I had to acknowledge it, come back and become aware, and start caring about, caring and start seeing my shame-based living, start seeing it another way, because you don't even realize the effect that it has on you. It causes you not to, have the highest self-confidence in the things that you're doing. It gives you, create an illusion that you have to do something different other than being your natural self. So it's important that you acknowledge it and you share it. So how did I overcome the experience? I start to integrate my story in my presentation. I would tell, when I start my presentation, I would tell the meaning of my name, and then I would tell my history of my experience, and people could relate to that. So step number 2 is acknowledging it and sharing your story appropriately. Like I said, you don't need the bullhorn where you tell everybody. Everybody don't need to know your story. Well, now, you tell people your name, they're going to go and Google it anyway. So tell your story and be authentic about it, and don't be ashamed of the experiences that you have that you have had in life. If you feel like if you can't, you're a man or a woman that was in a violent relationship, if you have had a past history of drug addiction or pill addiction, if you got raped, had an abortion, come from a family of alcoholism, it doesn't matter what the story is. Acknowledge it and share it and move on, And it's a very, very powerful lesson for today. But stay tuned. All 5 of the steps are very important for you to be able to move on into that greater you. Now, step number 3 is being able to forgive yourself out loud. You have to forgive yourself for the experience, and you do that by using step number 2, where you acknowledge it, and then you do it out loud. Out loud means you tell your story, you share it, and be truthful with yourself. You're not the only one that have life experiences. If I could have picked my life experience, if I had a choice at the time, God had talked about that, and if I had known up front that this was getting ready to happen, I would have chose a different one. I would have chose a lesson like, well, how about if I'm just very, very rich and I lose everything, and then let me tell that story. I would have went a different route, but I didn't have no say-so in it, so I had the experience, and I learned to embrace it. I learned to tell my story and then forgive myself. Not forgive myself for the experience. Now, I'm not asking you to forgive yourself for the experience. Forgive yourself for viewing and seeing the experience the way you did. Forgive yourself for not being able to shift your paradigm about the experience. That's what you're forgiving yourself for. In the next experience, you want to be able to open up and be more receptive to whatever the experience are that you're having. So forgive yourself. Be very truthful with yourself in sharing the experience. And step number 4 is that you need to, now that you've kind of mastered it, you need to go and give something back to those that, that are still having those experiences and stuff. And you find that, sometimes if a woman got raped, she'll start a nonprofit organization of helping other rape victims, or if she was in sex traffic, caught up in the sex traffic, she would go and start doing that work in her life. So sometimes, in many cases, those life experiences are designed to move us on to the next step, in our lives, So you have to, so forgive yourself for not being able to open yourself up to the experience at the time, and for feeling bad about having the experience. And step number 4 is you want to create a conscious plan, not to be involved in that experience again. So I don't know if I just covered that or not. But and so what I mean by a conscious plan is that each one of the steps kind of follow the other one. If you acknowledge it, you forgive yourself, and then you create that plan of not to hold on to the experience, and you're able to move on, with your life. And step number 5. That's where we come in at with our Picture Your Life workshop, because with the Picture Your Life workshop, you're able to pull all the experiences together and be able to create a vision vortex of how to use those experiences as a platform to create the business that you want to create, create the service that you want to provide to others. That's where we come in at, is helping you to picture the life that you want to live right now. Maybe if throughout the whole process that you haven't reached that point, or not just reaching the point, but not being able to recognize or see and really understand the reason for the experience in the first place. So maybe you wasn't a good mama or dad, and like I say, the pill head, the drug addict, had an abortion, whole family on alcohol, all of those things that we hear other people, but you don't want to continue to live in that shame-based lifestyle. You have the power to change it at any time. You have the power to do that. So let's see here now. The other thing that I want to talk about, to take a few minutes to do, is to acknowledge that that today is, that we're coming up to our Mother's Day. We're coming up to the Mother's Day this weekend, and I would like to first of all just acknowledge and wish each and every one of you all happy Mother's Day. And if your mother is not with you, if your mother's not with you and stuff, you can still acknowledge her by having a candle or a flower or something to acknowledge all the good that she has shared with you. Now, I operate from a belief system of, my all of the work that I do is based on an African-centered philosophy where we honor our, we honor our ancestors. So even though if our mom is not here with us, we still acknowledge her, because we feel, we believe that mom exists on a spiritual level, and that she's still able to, whisper to us and, and gives us inspiration and gives us information, things that will help us on our journey. So that's why, my mother, she's not here with me physically, but I feel like she'll be here with me in the spirit. So you can still acknowledge her with, with the flower, with the candle, because our mothers, leave so much good behind. And if you don't feel like your mother left the good behind, and you've been living some type of shame-based experience from having, not being able to connect with your mom the way you thought that you should have. And a lot of people have that problem now, where they have issues with their mom, so Mother's Day would be a good time for you to stop and to acknowledge that, and be able to and be able to move on, from that, because we're living in a different time now. I don't know if you paid any attention to if you just pay attention to what's going on around you. We are definitely living in a different time. We're living a time where a lot of us are trying to shed indifference, and we're trying to move into the collective consciousness, and we're wanting to embrace better ways that we can interact and with each other, that we can treat each other with respect, and that we can start loving ourselves. That's what all of my programs about. Holistic Living with Arbor QT is about loving yourself, because you can't just start out loving the whole world and you don't love yourself. And loving yourself means that you first of all, you have to, if you love yourself, you're going to take care of yourself. People tell me all the time, oh, I love me some me, and then you look at their behavior, like how much love is there when you are still having, the way that you treat your body and the information that you're putting in your mind, and when you look at a person's behavior, you can see that there's not a lot of love, going on there. So you start by loving yourself. You start by taking care of yourself. You start by moving past, start by forgiving yourself for all of the shame bases that you think that the shame-based experiences that you've had, and learning how to incorporate them, into your everyday experience. So take care of yourself, and learn how to take care of others around you. And the reason why I bring that up is because I have a neighbor, she's white, I'm black, and we always, we refer to each other as chocolate and vanilla, my chocolate and vanilla friend. But anyway, during the election, she had her sign out there for Pence and Trump, and I had my sign, because we're neighbors, she's right next door to me, and I had my sign out there biting it. So we agreed that because people have so many problems with isms, we agreed that we weren't going to, because we're friends, we weren't going to let each other's religion and politics, cause us not to be able to be friends. And so we have, as just as a whole and as human beings, we have to learn how to do that as well. How do we respect each other? How do we be friends? And how do we, the basic thing, respect each other and be able to move ahead? Create a conscious plan, not to keep reliving that same experience over and over and over again, because some of us get stuck. We had a lot of money, we had family, and we lost everything, and we're stuck in that. We're not able to use the experience as a stepping stone, because most of the time, if you pay attention to your experiences, you're going to discover that it is the universe telling you what your life purpose is. When I got off of drugs, the first thing I wanted to do is go back to be a drug counselor, and I did that for over 10, 15 years. That's what I did as a living. I worked as a drug counselor, because you feel like that